Great. Let's do a podcast. Me. There you go. Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews. Chris is just singing. What's going on?
Well, you did a little vocal me. So I was doing a little and then but then you started.
Yeah, sorry. I just started get it started. Should we call that the start? Should we start as we mean to continue in chaos?
No. We gotta get a clean intro sentence.
Okay.
Go again.
Hello and welcome to You know what's funny is I just knew. It was like opening a door that said like trap inside, and I'm like, yeah, cool. Like I knew what was gonna happen.
I think you said Steven Universe as well, didn't you? But I might be wrong.
I don't think I did, but if I did, I'm sorry. There you go.
Right. One more time, Dan. One more time.
That trapdoor's looking pretty. Okay.
No.
Hello and welcome to Rewind Reviews, the movie podcast where we look at movies from our past. So far we've had a look at Space Jam, Short Circuit, Mouse Hunt, and this week we took a look at the 1990 Bill Murray comedy Quick Change. I think it's 1990. I should have looked that up first, Chris, if I'm being honest with you. Mm-hmm. So I chose this one. So for those who don't know, if this happens to be your first episode, it is 1990. Your first episode of this podcast. Each week,
because Quick Change has a big audience. I expect there's probably a lot of Quick Change fans finding this late in the game.
Exactly, because it's such a huge film. Not a comment on its quality, might I add. Yeah, so this one was we usually start by talking about our sort of history with the film, and I chose this one, and we go back and forth. So last week, Chris chose Mouse Hunt. I've chosen Quick Change, and the reason I chose it is because we were talking earlier in the podcast about like the different kinds of movies that might come up while we do this, and Quick Change is a movie that, first of all, was certificate 15 in the UK, but I saw at the age of like, 8 or 9 or something, because basically it was on TV and I was recording something that aired prior to Quick Change, but the tape had been left running in long play mode, which meant you got like 4 to 6 hours out of the tape or whatever. So it recorded the thing I was trying to record and this film. And I had never heard of this film. I hadn't seen a trailer for this film. I didn't know who was in this film. I didn't know what the story of this film was. And I was watching the thing I had intended to watch. And when it finished, I was, just too lazy to get up, turn it off. And the quick change started, and I was like, all right, I'll give this a minute, then find out what this is. And I was just immediately hooked. And we've talked in the past how I had a weird thing as a kid where I really liked to watch stuff that was far out of my age group. I think a lot of people are going to be upset to discover what age I watched RoboCop, because it was too young. 7 years old, right, watching that guy get obliterated with those guns in the opening of that movie, that is far too fucking young. But my parents thought RoboCop was a kid's film, or at least like a mild like an action film, because it's a stupid robot cop. They did not realize that it was like an 18. They had no idea. Yeah. So I don't know if things like that gave me that attitude or whatever, but I just was always interested in stuff that was like way older than my age group anyway. But that wasn't really, I don't think, what happened here. I just think this film's story and characters and this premise of just trying to get out of the city from the following a heist, because that's what it's about. It's about a bank heist, and the heist goes perfectly, but then the city that they're trying to escape sort of bites back, and they have a lot of trouble escaping, essentially. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was funny. I thought the characters were likable, and I got really sucked in. And I had this working theory that would hold true. And I haven't seen it in many years, but I was confident that I hadn't made that up when I last saw it. And I think I last saw it in like my early 20s. I think that's when I last rewatched it, and I remember enjoying it then too. So I was like, wouldn't it be funny to get Chris to watch it? Because he hasn't seen a trailer, he's never heard of it either, because no one has. It's a really obscure Bill Murray film, And let's see if that holds true now as fully formed adults. So that I mean, I guess that is the question. What was your experience watching it?
Yeah, I think it absolutely does, and I can absolutely see why you would just end up watching the whole thing. Even the opening shot is so clever. So the opening shot is a beautiful aerial view of New York and Central Park, and then it pans out, and it's revealed that beautiful aerial view is a photograph on a crowded subway train, and the whole motif and film themes of the film are kind of summarized in that. It's
Yes.
this city is against them, and not like everywhere they go is a bad neighborhood, and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I think especially not knowing anything about it, it's quite fun because it's like, oh, that was a cool shot. Oh, Bill Murray's a clown. Okay, cool. Oh, he's robbing a bank. And I think, and this is sort of kind of broad summary. I don't think it's hilarious, but it's certainly captivating. They certainly do a great job of making you care and want Bill Murray's character and the other two guys with him, a man and a woman, succeed. But you kind of also want the chief to get his way as well. You basically want everyone to succeed, and I think it's because the fact that it's Bill Murray holds a lot of weight, especially in a modern context. I don't know how popular he was at the time, but now it's Bill Murray, and because he plays that sort of downbeaten, moody slock in quite a few films. There's a kind of automatic, you don't judge him for that. You're like, he's playing almost a Bill Murray type, but the Bill Murray type is always charming and the good guy. So I think that lends itself to watching this today. But I think it's also the script. They put the character through so much shit that you go, well, even though he's robbed a bank, he's had a bad run here, guys. Like he's not having a good day. Like, well, probably deserves not to have a good day, but you still, you still want him to succeed, and you're still pleased that the chief kind of gets a win as well.
And they deliberately lay that in, don't they? The Chiefs win. He says earlier that I forget the name of the what's the guy they
Lambino.
Lambino, that's it. With he says earlier in the film, like, Lambino takes more money out of this city every day than that clown could take in a long, long time. So they very clearly set up a moral equivalency thing going on there, early on, so you can sort of. I mean, not that is. That's actually. I don't know if you could. I think somebody could lay that as a criticism at the movie, because that is kind of just like, well, they're both stealing from the city. The clown, the clown didn't. The clown's not morally superior to, like, well, I suppose Lambino probably tortures dudes and all that stuff, I guess. But I don't know. That's a weird line to draw. With one criminal better than the other.
Yeah, absolutely it is. But the film does get away with it.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, it does.
And I guess spoilers for Quick Change. So go watch it if you fancy it. But like that last shot, you almost. So basically, the last shot of the movie is the police, the chief. What's his name?
The character or the actor?
No, the character. I can't remember. It begins with R. Ryan.
The cast list is bloody in order of appearance, so it's 1,000 hostages first. Rotzinger. It's
Rotzinger realizing, and they almost could have pushed that further, and had. I suppose it's not as funny, but Rotzinger realize, and then sort of like hear the clicking of the cameras, or see Lambino getting arrested, and just sort of smile in well, okay, like He's got away, but he helped me capture the big fish. Fine, and I think that's not as funny, but they could have easily got away with doing that, which says a lot for the work they'd done throughout the rest of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because I think in terms of the comedy in the first sort of, let's say, act, which is the bank robbery, that's all very. Now, I think that section makes me laugh out loud more, because the comedy in the second section comes from their circumstances. It's situational comedy in that it just, you think their situation just can't get any worse, and every time it does, and you're just like, oh my god, how is this happening? Like when the car, you just know where it's going when once that car goes over the edge of that. There's a bit where they basically accidentally park their car. Well, not accidentally. They park it in front of a fire hydrant because they're like, well, we'll only be a minute. Don't worry about it. And then a fire breaks out at the house across the street. It's like the odds of that happening are so slim. The fire brigade smash the window of the car, undo the clutch, roll it away, but then they lose control of it, and it goes right off the edge of this thing into, say, like a Central Park or something, into like a great grassed area. I don't know if it's Central Park. It's some other green area in New York. And that from that moment on, the comedy comes from just watching them desperately trying to do something that should be so easy, just get to the airport.
Yeah.
But it's just so complicated because of the circumstances, you know. So, but that first half of the movie, it's more traditional Bill Murray humor, you know. And I know that the first laugh the movie gets out of me, other than the you know, that sort of clever opening shot, and the visual of a miserable clown on the train holding his balloons. The first joke that makes me laugh in this movie is he passes like a strip club, and the guy's saying, like, nude girls, and then Bill Murray's character walks past and he starts going, clowns welcome, nude girls, clowns welcome. That makes me laugh every single time, and it's particularly good. Bill Murray has this like bit towards he's walking, he's just slightly not out of frame yet, but he's about to be, and that's the moment he sort of pauses and looks back as if, wait, did I just hear that guy say clowns welcome? It's really good. Every time that bit makes me laugh. But like all the stuff inside the bank before they, you know, it becomes the get out of New York section, you know, the stuff with the dog, when he tells the dog to stop moving, like he tells everyone to stop moving, but the dog is still lipping its lips. Like this old security guard that just gives him his gun and is like, I'm too old for this. No, you're fine. You can rob the place. The fact that no one believes him, the way he is when he comes out and he's still in disguise. You know, he's a madman. He's a monster. You know, all that stuff is all very overt comedy, like just traditional sort of like 80s, 90s comedy. And then that all sort of shifts for this second part, which is just like a comedy of errors then, you know, and as a result, I don't find myself laughing as hard at the second half of the movie, but the second half of the movie is probably more gripping, because like that's there's a sequence where they end up accidentally infiltrating the mob, and they're on a bus and they've got a minute and a half because they've got the most stickler bus driver in the world, and he's going to leave on the second, and he has to go into after they escape that. They have to go into the store, and it's all these things come together at once, where the cab driver's looking for them, the mobster's looking for them, and he just needs to get change so he can get on the bus, and he's got a minute and 30 seconds. That minute and 30 seconds probably takes up 4 minutes of screen time, but you get away with it, I think, here. And that's so, like, tense, and what's good about those scenes isn't necessarily where it's funny, although it can be. It's more about you get invested in the sort of drama of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and it's just by me saying I didn't, you know, find it hilarious doesn't mean it's not funny. It's just, you know, it's always, I think, you know, when you're watching comedy on your own. But I think it's the most enjoyable experience of any of these we've done so far. It's definitely very funny. And I think, like you say, there's a slight shift, but it becomes, oh God, what are they going to throw at them next? But the way it's kind of that classic, almost Fawlty Towers-esque comedy and writing style of all these things interweaving into a crescendo at the end where they all come together. And it's very clever writing because they also manage to do a lot of character stuff. I think they're quite clever there's a plot with his girlfriend who also robbed the bank where she is pregnant and she doesn't know how to tell him, and they let the audience know very early on. It's very obvious what she wants to tell him, so you know she's pregnant way before Bill Murray's character.
Yes.
And it just means that every time he's doing something that he doesn't realise is shitty but is, you feel for her and you understand her position, and I think the character work is really, really strong.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's quite surprising for a movie like this because, I mean, look, if they didn't do that plot, I don't know if I'd have walked away from this movie not liking it. I mean, it's still like the rompy nature is still there. It probably wouldn't be as good. That really adds to it, I think, because you care more for the characters as a result. But these sort of movies in the 80s and 90s didn't need to do that sort of stuff. They got away with not doing that kind of thing. You know, we demand a little bit more from our films now, I think, in terms of like making sure they do decent character work and that we're invested in them. But this sort of movie, like, you know, it's just a little crime caper, a little bit of a get out of the city situation, bit of comedy, bish bash bosh out of there. They could have taken a much easier route and not really spent much time developing that relationship, but they did, and I'm glad they did, because I think the problem you might have come across if you give me this premise and say write this script is, how do you make a bank robber sympathetic? How do you make a bank robber that hates the city and the people sympathetic? And that's the real challenge here, like is finding that balance. But I don't think they just did that character work to make him not. I think they tried to ensure that all the characters were just more well-rounded than just, our goal is to rob a bank. I have nothing else going on in my life.
Yeah.
But it does add to the sympathy thing, because empathy, I should say, really, more than sympathy. Because I think it's important to sort of, because I mean, little spoiler. I'll jump ahead to just a piece of trivia. But Ron Howard was actually approached to direct the film, but he declined because he felt there was no character to root for.
Oh wow! No, I think I can understand that completely, and I think if someone was to say to me, like, oh, I don't root for anyone, I don't know who I'm supposed to root for, I would understand that.
Yes.
I didn't personally feel that way, but I could absolutely get someone else feeling that way. I think, like I say, I think for me, the Bill Murray of it all helps. And to be fair to Ron Howard, that might not have been the case at the time. But, you know, I think that does add a layer now. He's the perfect actor to play this part.
Yeah, yeah.
And what his casting inherently brings with it helps.
Yeah, and I think Bill Murray has gone on the record since and said that this is one of his favorite films he's done, and then he's talked about the cast, and he's just been like, you could. I've got the exact quote here actually. How about that cast? You couldn't get that cast together for all the tea in China now, which is. I mean, he's not wrong. You flick through it, and it is pretty amazing. Randy Quaid, Gina Davis, Bill Murray, Jack Gilpin. I'm trying to see some of the others without, like, Tony Shalhoub obviously plays the cab driver in one of his first roles. Tony Shalhoub, obviously, you know, beloved character actor. Jason Robards, like, it just seems to go on. Like, it's such an awesome cast. I'm trying to see Phil Hartman, obviously, prior to his death, like, just incredible. Oh, Stanley Tucci, obviously, and even one of the smaller roles, like Mr. Lambino, Kurtwood Smith.
Yeah.
You know, who was a big name at this point. He'd done RoboCop. That was the other thing that blew my mind, actually. As a kid who'd seen RoboCop a couple of years before, watching this movie and seeing the villain from RoboCop show up in this movie in a comedy role, I was just like, wait, what? That really blew my mind. I couldn't see him as anything but utterly evil. And I know Mr. Lambino isn't, like, he's not a good guy, but he's kind of like a comic mobster, isn't he? He's kind of, you know, nobody says anything to Miss Russ Crane. You know, like he's a funny character. So it's just a really, the cast, and I think the cast sells so much of this movie. I think easily, if they hadn't have gotten an actor with Lebanese heritage, that cab driver role becomes offensive. But I actually think what they did with the cab driver in this was go, well, look, some people come to this country from outside of it. He is a bit confused, but he needs work. Like, they actually make the cab driver sympathetic.
Yeah, especially with the Chief's attitude towards him. That plays well. And it's, you know, and I don't know whether it's, you know, because we've just watched Short Circuit, but it definitely doesn't feel, you know, comparatively, at the very least, that bad.
Yeah. And at least they didn't, you know, give someone brown face.
And they didn't go down obvious routes with it as well. They didn't go down like, oh, it turns out he can understand everyone all along, or, you know.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree.
It was played very, naturally, I thought.
And I think that so apparently the language he's speaking in this is no known language. Basically, they were trying to just keep it vague rather than aim it at any particular country. There are a lot of sort of people from there are a lot of different countries bunched together in that part of the world. And the idea was he's from one of those, but we'll keep it.
Oh, cool. Well, again, another very sensitive thing to do. You could argue if they
for the time frame, absolutely.
If you make it a specific language, then it could be seen as offensive to that specific country. But if it's broad,
yeah. So it's and having been to New York, obviously that is a trend. People come to the country. One of the easiest jobs, not easiest. That's really offensive. One of the sort of jobs with the most positions available. When you first get to the country, it's taxi driving. They need hundreds of thousands of them. So it's where a lot of people start in New York making money. Pay their rents and stuff. And so I think they've gone with a bit of a stereotype, but I don't think it's as offensive at all as like the Indian stereotype they play in Short Circuit by any shape or form. And the character is actually absolutely lovable. He's so good in this. I mean, this is one of the roles that launched Tony Shalhoub's career. But like, holy hell, every time he asks them where to, and they tell him, and he gives them the thumbs up, like, "Yep, got it." And then about 2 minutes later in the conversation, he'll ask where to again. And then
there was also him, because also how clever because when he left after he thought he'd killed the guy. I thought, well, that character's not coming back. To have him then come back and immediately fall on the floor and be like, arrest me, arrest me.
Yes. Yeah.
That was brilliant.
That's so funny. When he's like basically crying and he's holding out his wrists to be handcuffed. That's great. Because he feels so guilty that guy jumped out of his cab. It's brilliant. He's one of the best parts of this film.
Even though it's not even his fault. The guy decided to jump out.
Yeah. Absolutely, he did. Well, to move back a little bit to the bank heist itself, did you? Because obviously, what I loved when I was watching it was the way the heist unfolds. It's quite clever because you don't know the plan, but there's a plan cleverly put together. And when you see that hostage turns around and it's Bill Murray, and you go, "That's how he's getting out." Had you at that point? Because I hadn't as a kid, at least. Had you figured out the other two hostages were in on it until she started rubbing the paint off his ear?
I'd say because they have you don't see him pick up that phone call. It's just the gloved hand,
right? And
then you hear "you ready" right behind you, and I'm like, oh, that's how they're getting out. Then they're going to pretend to be the hostages. So slightly earlier than the moment you're describing.
You're right.
But no, I was like sat there going, how's he getting out of this? Like,
yeah. So
until that moment.
Yeah, you thought, why would you deliberately show just the hand?
Yeah.
Right. So you sussed out from the
phone. And there's a bit of like chemistry between them when she's playing the hostage and he's playing the clown. The third guy was like, when he then appeared, I was like, oh, cool, great, like that's clever as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What I love about him is when you first realise that he was also in on it, you sort of think, oh, he was acting. That was really good acting. And then, like, he was just, like, acting crazy, like, and, like, upset. And then suddenly it also makes sense the way Bill Murray very deliberately got them to get him sent out first, where he goes, where he says, oh, we've got the, these sort of people get people killed, and then they're all like, he's like, so who do you want to go first? They're all like, him.
And like they time it so that he's just like thrown up as well.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Yeah. So that was a very funny moment, and I almost want more comeuppance somehow for the smarmy business guy who's trying to convince the clown to let him go first, and he does have quite a funny line when they're letting the hostages out, and you just hear him go, has anyone seen a watch up there?
Yeah. What I love is when he was willing to give it away for his life, it was worth it, but it wasn't worth it for $300. And he was very upset to have lost out there. I also love that joke about when he's taking the money right up top, and he goes, "Don't worry, it's insured." And he goes, "I haven't got a receipt yet. It's not insured if I ain't got a receipt." And he's like, "All right, give him a receipt." Does anyone else need a receipt before we move on?
But even that in itself, again, is a subtle. That's the kind of subtle thing that makes you warm to the character, because it functions as a joke, so that's quite good.
Yes.
But B, even though he's robbing the bank, he's not a nasty person. He's not robbing the little guy. Sorry. He's happy to help the little guy get the money back. Like he knows that they should be covered. Yes. Equally, although this one was a bit, when he gives the crazy guitar guy who's trying to get on the bus all $6,000 of the mob money, I suppose that it says, he doesn't want that someone else's dirty money that might have been got through drug laundering and violent crime. Maybe it says that. I was a little bit like, why are you giving away that? Don't you, like, how much money are we conceivably believing that you guys have got strapped to you, considering everything else was taken earlier in the film? And that kind of almost confused me a bit, because when they get robbed and the guy drives off, he's like, "Okay, see, thanks for taking our $1 million." So I'm like, "Oh, has that guy got all the money then? Did he find some of it? Was some of it in bags?"
I think.
But then I'm like, no, none of it could be in bags because it was all carried out on their person. I don't know.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I found that gag a little bit confusing as well, because I wasn't sure, if he was making fun of him for not finding the millions, or if he had, or there was a bag with some also in it. That was a bit unclear. But it seemed to me that like they certainly had more than enough strapped to them that they were set. In 90s. Well, in 90s money world, the thing they'd robbed was all still strapped to them. So the extra 6,000 seemed like a quick solution to a problem.
Yeah, he even later, like, he specifies it as $1 million, so they've got at least $1 million still strapped to them.
Yeah, so I mean so I see what you're saying there. Like that joke is really unclear. So for those who haven't seen it, although it'd be hard to, this movie's a hard one to explain for people, to bring up people on board who haven't seen it, because the scenes are all so specific and so strange. But there's a scene where they themselves get robbed, where they're moving. It's one of my favorite sequences in the movie. Actually, it's the initial "we're out in the city" scene when it's still daytime, and they're passing this guy, and he looks quite friendly, and then the prediction is he must be from out of town because everyone else from this town is absolutely insane. And then they say he's got Iowa plates, and he's like, "Oh, cool, yeah, so he's out of town, so he's like a serial killer then or something," and that's the joke. And then the guy actually pulls a gun on them, and he's like, because he says, "What's Iowa like?" And he's like, "I've never been to Iowa. This is a stolen car." And then the next shot is just Bill Murray being marched away with a gun pointed at his back.
No, it's even better than that, because he's just like, "So what's Iowa like? Huh? Oh, this is a stolen car."
Yeah, it's great.
It's so matter of fact.
And every performance in this movie, big or small, and there are a lot of different cast members in this movie, because it's basically, as they're going around, there's all these small set pieces with different members of this. They really bring the city to life with people, I found, and I think that's really clever, because you can make the city feel alive, like they do in that one scene towards the end where the street is like pitch black. And there's the lady screaming the thing from Streetcar Named Desire, and there's like rubbish blowing around, and it's dimly lit, and it just looks creepy and crap. You could have done that the whole movie, made everywhere look like a shithole. But in a lot of the movie, what they actually do is make the people seem crazy, and they bring the city to life through the people doing weird and insane things. Whether it's the two street guys that are just like, we just take the signs down, we don't put them back up again. Or the lady yelling at them, or the two people that do a joust on pedal bikes, like.
Yeah, that's the one that feels weirdest in a way, because the movie sort of pauses for that moment to happen, and you're like, huh? Like,
I kind of love that about it though, because I love the commitment to that gag. Like, that's almost funnier than the gag itself, is the commitment to it. Like, the soundtrack changes, the camera work changes, it becomes this weird Mexican standoff as these two people on pedal bikes with like brooms like pedal at each other. And it's treated really dramatically. And one of them gets knocked off, and half the people are cheering, and other people are like like almost reacting as if the guy just died. Like it's actually mental.
There's a kid ringing the church bells and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. I love that joke because again, it's the commitment to the joke, to be honest with you, more than anything. But it's indicative of this whole movie's approach of just bringing this city to life, and everyone seems to have a story. Everyone seems fleshed out. Even the guy that used to own the apartment they're in, his interactions with his wife feel so absurdly human. They're bickering while they think they're being robbed, and they have people at gunpoint. You know what I mean? Like it's just.
Oh, you mean the guy who's they're moving into that apartment, aren't they? I think.
Is he not the former landlord? Okay, I misunderstood on my rewatch. Yeah, okay, so he's the guy moving into that apartment. And
yeah, it's all very convoluted. It's like she knows the landlord or something, and like because Bill Murray's questioning her on how she knows the guy, and then that never really goes anywhere. And then he comes in and he's talking about how they're moving in because they pretend to be the former tenants, and they're like, "Oh, we got a much better deal." Da 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 da. That whole thing is a bit convoluted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
this film is actually based on a book, and I'm wondering if that makes more sense in the book.
Yeah, maybe.
If they do exactly that, the thing is, I don't know. I think it's a French book, and I honestly don't know how much of this is directly taken from that, because it all feels very New York. So I actually have a feeling that the opening bank heist premise and escaping as the hostages is probably in the book, and then the idea of getting out of town. Because I don't think the book is a comedy, and I think getting out of town and getting to the plane and having a bunch of misadventures and problems doing that I think that's probably in the book. But I think the specifics once they're out of the bank, because it's so New York, like a lot of this stuff, and the book isn't set in New York. So yeah, I don't think that's all in the book. It might be, but the idea of being dressed as a clown as you rob it as well is from the book. That's one of the striking images I think they sold the script based on. And it's actually weirdly the second adaptation of that book. There was a French film sometime in the middle of the 80s, like 85, because the book's from 81. There's a French film in 85, 86. Called Hold Up, 85, and that actually weirdly has Kim Cattrall in it. Before she was sort of more known, and I don't know. The tone of that seems to be more drama. So I'm guessing that's probably closer to the original novel. I'm guessing.
It's funny, when this started, I was like, are we watching this because Joker's just come out, and this is like an 80s, 90s version of Joker?
Right. Honestly, the only thing
Clown committing a crime.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I hadn't even thought of that. No. I suppose because to me, he's only the clown for the first sort of 10 minutes of the movie or whatever. So I guess that's why that didn't occur to me. But yeah, that idea though of like the city being like a presence in the film, but not doing it in the obvious way that like a much a much worse screenwriter would do it, which is just to make the city dark and dingy and all this stuff, but you just make the people very, very well thought out, very lively, make them feel like they've all got a story, they've all got a life. They don't just exist for that 20 seconds they got screen time. Do you know what I mean? Like Phil Hartman's character in that scene, it's clear he's trying to keep his wife happy, and like they're also a bit tight on money because like the idea of how much they're paying for it. They've just moved out of a rent-controlled apartment, which is arguably a mistake, and he's worried that's going to cause friction. Like there's just so much character in everyone in this movie, and that's insane. Like you probably could have got away with doing less than they did here. I'm glad they did what they did because from my perspective, it's certainly a more entertaining, sort of outcome for it to be this way. So, but it brings the whole thing round to life. Like, because I just think you take that out and it loses so much. And that's, I think, what separates this from being just another generic 90s comedy or whatever. Bill Murray did a lot of movies. Things like that separate this from those, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think my whole Bill Murray thing is more about, I'm thinking of like the big ones like Groundhog Day and stuff like that, and Scrooged and stuff.
Well, this came out This came out right in that golden age for Bill Murray. So Groundhog Day was just after this, and Ghostbusters and Scrooged and She's Having a Baby all came prior to this.
So how come this wasn't? Because this, I don't know if we're verging into trivia here, but this wasn't a big. From the quick look I had afterwards, because actually I watched this morning. I've literally just watched this, and then before the recording, and so I had a brief look whilst on the toilet at the Wikipedia, and it said that it wasn't a hit.
Oh, it wasn't at all. No, I'm not sure why, because you think that would have been a slam dunk. Bill Murray, Gina Davis, Randy Quaid as the three leads, like a fun heist movie, right in that era. And then on top of that, you know, like it's, I mean, well, yeah, I mean, just in that Bill Murray golden age, like you just think that would be enough, but evidently not. I'm not sure exactly what caused it to not succeed. But I do know that it was critically very well received.
Right.
So it's a strange one. I don't know what would you. I can't even imagine what would be the cause. He'd just been in Ghostbusters.
No, I guess it
2.
just
He'd
sometimes
just done Ghostbusters 2 and Scrooged.
Sometimes great movies just don't light at the box office. Competitive, maybe. You know, who knows?
Should we have, I'm gonna have a look what came out alongside it. I'm gonna have.
I was gonna say, have a quick look at see if you can work out what came out alongside.
Yeah, maybe it was just someone else took the. But yeah, you'd think. I mean, to be fair, I'm looking at one of the original posters, and it's not particularly engaging. It's just a black.
Is it the one?
Go on.
Is it the one with the where it's like the clown and it almost looks like a horror movie?
A little, yeah. It's Bill Murray, Gina Davis, Randy Quaid, Jason Robards in big black text on a white background, and then just a picture of Bill Murray's clown stood to the side of it, and it's a white.
Yeah,
background.
that's not the. Because I saw two posters, that and then one where it's like them through a street scene with all these objects representing their challenges, and that second one is a much better poster. But on the Wikipedia, it's the Bill Murray text horror one, and I was like, that's not reflective. I think of this movie.
The DVD I ultimately bought of that. You know, when I got a little bit older, and I was starting my DVD collection. Quick Change was one of the first ones I wanted to acquire on DVD, and that has the colourful poster with lots of visual references to
the film.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to see now if I can figure out what happened. So we don't know the production budget, but it only made 15 million. That is rough. That is really rough. When did it come out? Let's have a look at 1990. Well, there was a lot of big movies came out that year. Shall I read you a list of some of the movies that came out that year?
Well, what came out around the same time?
That I'm having a little bit more trouble finding, but let me have it. Oh my god. I mean...
Because but if this came out in November and a big movie came out in February, it didn't affect this.
No, true. I just think it was a very crowded year, so the odds of there being something coming out alongside it are high. Because it's yeah. Let me get the release date and I'll go from there. 1 second. Release date July 13, 1990. So it came out alongside Ghost and Jungle Book.
Okay, both of which were big movies.
And Ghost was of that year, I think, the third highest grossing film of the year. Second.
There you go then.
So that, I think, is
that could have had something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would if I was a betting man, Chris. Well, let me have a look. Yearly 1990. Yeah, Ghost was the second highest grossing movie of the year behind Home Alone, and Dances with Wolves, and Pretty Woman, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Total Recall. Fuck me, what a year! Back to the Future Part 3, Kindergarten Cop, Three Men and a Little Lady, Godfather Part 3, a lot of threes that year. Wow.
People wanted those franchises, baby, back in 1990. And Quick Change. It's just it's ahead of its time in the sense that it's just a original take. It's not a sequel, just trying to make it in a franchise world.
I mean, yeah, look, seriously, it's like Predator 2, Rocky 5, Gremlins 2, RoboCop 2, Look Who's Talking 2, Godfather Part 3, Back to the Future Part 3, Die Hard 2. I mean, it is. I mean, we talk about that being a problem these days, but Exorcist 3, Child's Play 2, if I've not already said that one. Yeah, it was a busy year for sequels. So maybe it got a bit washed up in that. It didn't. Yeah, it's certainly one of the lower. But the thing is, the problem you've got there is, so it only made 15 million in the box office, right? Which is pretty low as it goes. The thing is, that movie probably cost less than 15 million to physically make, but you've got that cast.
Yeah.
So that's your money, right? That's where your money's gone. On Gina Davis and Randy Quaid at the time probably didn't go cheap either. And that's putting Bill Murray to the side for a second, and he'd just done Ghostbusters 2. So it's that's hard. That's a rough one. That's a rough one.
It's a shame of it. It's a shame. Sorry. I think this movie deserves more attention than, because I would say I said to a few older people, "Oh, I'm doing a podcast tomorrow on a Bill Murray film, Quick Change," and nobody knew it. Nobody. Mm-hmm. Nobody at work, no family, no friend. I was like, man, this movie is not.
Yeah, and let's be honest. If I hadn't. If the programming people for whatever channel aired this back in the day hadn't put something I was interested in front of Quick Change, I wouldn't have seen it either, and it would still be an unknown quantity. It would still just be a thing we might look. I might read through a list of Bill Murray movies, and you'd say it out loud and go, "I don't know what that one is. It's got Gina Davis in it. Cool, I guess." She was good in Glow this year. That's like I don't know what more I'd have said about that movie, but thankfully, just through coincidence, I stumbled across it, and I do think it's worthwhile. I think, honestly, of all the ones we've done, and we've spoiled a fair bit of it now, which is a shame. But if you haven't seen it, I do think it's worth your time for sure. I would recommend this one, and I was glad it held up on this view, and I'm glad that you liked it as well, because I really wasn't sure how convincing me saying this would be good would come across in a world where obviously nostalgia plays a big part in. I mean, I'm still defending Short Circuit, and you're still defending Mouse Hunt. I think we've got issues. I don't know how reliable we are as reviewers.
I think that's what was so enjoyable about it. It was a film I've not seen, but I enjoyed it a lot more than Short Circuit. And with Space Jam and Mouse Hunt, there was Space Jam. It was Mouse Hunt. It was pure nostalgia. Space Jam, there was a kind of a disappointing sense of, oh, it's not that good. That's a shame. But this one I thoroughly enjoyed.
Me too. Do you think that it?
What's the triv, Dan?
Well, yeah.
Oh, you're going to say something else?
Well, I was just going to say, in terms of these sort of films. I mean, what is it you think about this one specifically? That Is it story first? Do you think that what hooks you in? Because I'm trying to figure out why 9-10-year-old Dan, or however old I was when I stumbled across this film, was pulled in. And is it a combination of everything, or is it the story? Is it that initial heist is exciting and interesting, and then by the time that's done, I'm invested in the people? I'm not really sure.
I think story. It's definitely story that. The story would have pulled you in as a kid. Character makes it hold up now because, just visually, you're like, "What's this clown doing?" And then you're like, "Shit, he's robbing someone." And then you're like, "How's he getting out of this?" And then the minute he gets out of this, he's back in trouble. So you're like, "How's he getting out of this? How's he getting out of this?" It's a road trip movie in a way, even though they don't. Yes. Ironically, they don't. They struggle to leave the city, but that continued momentum of what's happening next. It's a race. It's a heist. That's definitely, I think, the initial pull.
Yeah,
I think the reason it holds up is because of the character work.
Yeah, I would agree, and I do think as well something you said really not triggered is the wrong word, but really piqued my oh yeah, that makes sense. Is when you compared it to Fawlty Towers. I do think there is something about the way the structure of this script is that is sitcom-esque in that.
Yes,
and in the best way, in the way that the different elements come together. When you watch a really well done sort of old British sitcom where there's 3 or 4 elements that seem disparate and then they all come together at once. The more modern example I can think of is that episode of the IT Crowd where they go to that musical, and I'm not going to spoil the episode, but it's the one where Roy ends up pretending he's disabled and Moss ends up at the bar, and then Jen comes out, and those two stories are completely disparate. But when Jen comes out, not knowing how either of those two things have happened, and witnesses one after the other, her confusion is this amazing thing that just pulls the whole thing together. This movie is kind of like that in a movie form, in terms of like there are these disparate elements. Like you don't think the cab driver's coming back, you don't think the mob thing is coming back, and yet it all crescendos at the end, because the cab driver thing is actually a big part of the ending, which is really clever, because you assume that the reason they've gone to the airport is because the cab driver has finally cleared up where he was taking them, and they're after them. But in reality, it's the mob boss's right-hand man is actually dating his wife and has given him up.
Yeah.
Which is a
that
really
bit where the guy suddenly runs forward and is like, Mrs. Mrs. Lambino, has anyone checked on her?
Yeah, it's great. It's so clever, and like it makes sense because when the police are at the airport and our main caster at the airport are protagonists, for lack of a better word here, you assume that those two things have crescendo because the police are after them. But the idea that the mob guy gave away Mr. Lambino, and that's the reason they're there, because like, well, the clowns escaped, we've given up on that, but we might be able to catch a pretty big fish here because we've caught Lambino's right-hand man, so Lambino can't be far behind. You don't know that, but when you realise that, it all suddenly makes a lot of sense. It's very well done. But all of those plots coming together in that way, without the cab driver, that doesn't make any sense, because you'd be like, well, how did they know they were going to the airport? So without the mob element, then there's no twist. There's no twist there at the end. Like, you know, it all sort of crescendos, and it is indicative of like a really brilliant. Particularly, that was a common trope, I think, more in British sitcoms than American ones, in my experience. Yeah. But it's still so satisfying to watch, and I think that's again indicative of just very clever writing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, hit the trivia.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so I've already mentioned, but it is an adaptation of a 1981 French novel by J. Cronley. And so apparently it was about 14 years after Quick Change before another one of his novels got adapted, and it was a French film in 2004 called Nos Amis Les Flics.
Quick Change's box office having a little impact there, by the sounds of it.
I think that's probably right. Yeah, that one was adapted from his novel Cheap Shot. But the first filmed version of Quick Change I've already mentioned was a French film called Hold Up, which starred Kim Cattrall and Jean-Paul Belmondo. The original director, Jonathan Demme, became unavailable. And the writer, Howard Franklin, and Bill Murray, who'd become a producer for the first time in his career on this film, could not agree on who would be good enough to direct the project. So they actually decided to do it themselves, which is why Bill Murray's only ever directing credit is this movie. He co-directed it with the writer. And according to according to Variety, the Franklin and Murray became far too attached to the project during development to let anyone else direct it. And that's what actually happened. So they just basically kind of fell in love with it. And when it came to choosing a replacement director, just didn't trust anyone else to do it.
Fair play to them.
They were like, we've worked on this for so long, this is it. Bill Murray once said of this film in an interview, everyone will enjoy this movie, but New Yorkers particularly will enjoy it because they all know how bad their city really is. I love Bill Murray.
It does paint a bad picture of New York.
But yeah, I've only visited it once, but I tell you what, it's not an inaccurate picture of New York. You know what I mean? It's, you know, I remember I can name multiple moments when I was visiting New York that you could have just put straight in this movie and it wouldn't have felt out of place. Do you know what I mean? So the city is insane. Like, I remember you go into the stores and you can push a button in any aisle of a shop and it will sound a special like tannoy that's like, you know, aisle 3, and then the clerk knows to come to that aisle if you need assistance. So someone pushed it near where I was stood, and it was like, you know, assistance needed, aisle 3, and I just heard these two people shouting back and forth. It was like something like, you know, Janine, you gonna get that? No. You on break? No, I just don't wanna. And I was like, amazing. And like everyone in the store could hear these people. They were shouting across the store at each other. Like it wasn't like they had a private conversation. They just like yelled it. So everyone in that store knew that Janine just didn't wanna. You know what I mean? Like it's like, or like the time a guy was like on his bike and a car was trying to go around him, but he stuck his leg out to stop the car going around him and just yelled, "Bike lane, motherfucker!" But there was no bike lane. There was no bike lane, Chris. He just made one with his leg. It was literally insane. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that he feels that New Yorkers really know how bad the city can be, because I visited it and had enough experiences to know that New York can be like this. So in another interview, obviously, Bill Murray said it's great. It's a great piece of writing. And how about the cast? You couldn't get that cast together for all the tea in China right now. That's exactly right. I've already mentioned it's the second adaptation. Why is that in here so often? I thought I'd called this trivia, but there you go. The Mexican flower woman at the airport who cries "Flores, Flores, para los muertos" is a tribute to a streetcar named Desire, in which a Mexican flower woman cries the same phrase outside Stanley Kowalski's apartment. It could also technically be a reference to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, another film about a bickering couple.
That was a quite intense scene. I thought the lighting, and I think as you said earlier, the cinematography on that scene is beautiful.
It's brilliant, and I'm glad they did it, but I'm also glad they didn't do it for the whole movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's
fair.
Yeah, but it is a great scene. It's really funny, and then the moment of joy when the baggage cart then just appears, and they're like, "Okay, we're close. Well, we must be close. There's a baggage cart for the airport. We're going to," and then just that next shot is just them in the baggage cart. Like, I love that they never show them convincing the baggage cart guy to let them ride it.
Yeah.
I actually kind of think what you could have done, just as a suggestion I might pitch, is, you know how they gave the $6,000 to that guy with the guitar? I like the idea that everywhere they went, they just slowly gave away that money. Like, here's $1,000, here's $2,000,
and then they're left with none at the end.
Yeah, yeah. So there's someone they try to bribe, and he goes into the envelope and realizes that none of it is left. I think that could have been a good idea. But anyway, when the gang are riding in the baggage cart around the airport, there's a sign on the wall that says Lambino Realtors, confirming what Grimm and Rotzinger have been saying about Lambino owning a lot of places in the city. That's a pretty clever little nod. During their escape, when they missed the Brooklyn Queens Expressway, Loomis backs the car up because he saw a sign. The sign says 49 Mile Scenic Drive, which is actually in San Francisco, which is, I think, part of the joke. Apparently, a local gang offered to pay the security bill, and when Bill Murray turned them down, all their camera equipment mysteriously went missing, which postponed filming. So they were in New York. A gang offered to do the film's security. Bill Murray said no, because obviously we don't trust some local gang. We'll hire a professional security company. And then that gang retaliated by stealing all their cameras.
That is incredible.
What's amazing about that is, again, it's like a scene from the fucking movie.
Yeah, like it proves the movie's point, doesn't it?
It really does. Again, I love New York, but there's so much truth in all of this. Yeah. So the name Loomis would have been considered unusual, if not rare. It is odd, then, that Randy Quaid has actually played Loomis in this movie, but also played a character called Sheriff Loomis in the 1986 movie The Wraith, starring Charlie Sheen.
Lewis. Same Loomis, same fella. This is the start of a universe, Dan. It was a franchise after all.
Yeah, they was like the Avengers of its time. Yeah, Gina Davis was really playing one of her other characters. Who was it earlier? You said it was the same character in the other movies. I can't remember. There was another person we did that with. So yeah, there you go. I called the trivia a bit more heavily this week. Because
nice.
Yeah. So it's my favorite piece of trivia is the thing about the cameras going missing.
That's amazing. That makes me want to watch the movie about the making of this movie.
Well, yeah. Apparently, this movie did have a bit of a fraught production. I don't know much. There was a piece of trivia that literally just said that, and I was like, well, in what way? I would love to find out more about exactly what that is.
I want to see that, and I want to see the sequel where, you know, the chief tried to go back after them by following them to Fiji and stuff. Quick Changes. Just
Writes
works for
itself.
Cameron. Fuck it, add an S. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that is the way they did it back then.
that would have been
I'm on
great.
board. I'm on board. I'm on board. So yeah, I mean, overall thoughts. I think of all the movies we've watched, this holds up the best so far for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think it absolutely holds up. I think that it's the characters are really funny. The following of what happens next makes it really engaging. I can see why you liked it as a kid, and I think it's not necessarily in 10 years. I'm not waiting for Jess to get back to show it to her as well. I don't know if I'll necessarily watch it again in the next decade, but I would consider watching it again. Absolutely, I think it does hold up, and I genuinely think it's a real shame it's not more popular because I think it probably deserves to be.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think there's a weirdly timeless element to it. I mean, all the other movies that we've reviewed so far felt of their time. Space Jam felt very much like first forays into like sort of very targeted and somewhat cynical, approaches to filmmaking to try and make money. I think there was some effort to make it as good as possible, but you can't deny it came from a series of commercials that were popular. So, the people who were making this movie had dollar signs in their eyes with Space Jam. Short Circuit has the problematic stuff from the 80s holding it back. Mouse Hunt, I think, suffers from there was an era like after Home Alone where a lot of people were doing these slapstick movies. With with mixed results, So they all feel like you don't get those movies anymore. They literally don't make those movies anymore. But you could probably release this movie today. You'd obviously with more modern cameras and maybe a more updated cast. But you'd barely have to change anything about the script, to be honest with you.
No, you could. You think it's? I'll tell you what. What would be an amazing experiment? I think you could do this movie again today with Bill Murray still.
You know what? You're right. You absolutely could, and Gina Davis as well, because she was in Glow this year, and she's still got it. She's great. She was really sharp in Glow. I mean, I know her career she sort of had a big. She had a peak sort of 80s, 90s, early 90s, then she sort of vanished. I mean, my Gina Davis is like role I always keep going back to is Beetlejuice. She's just incredible in that movie. Yeah. So and I always think of her from that. But obviously her career sort of like tapered a little bit after that. But she was in Glow this year, and she is as good as she was back here. In fact, I think she's gotten better. Yeah. I think she's aged like a fine wine, Chris.
Oh, there you go. Well, praise indeed for Gina Davis from Dan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's great in Glow. She was really good in it this year.
I've not seen her in Glow, but I thought she was wonderful in here. And who's the third guy then that we've not? Well, the two other. So are the other two people still working? What's their deal? The guy who played the third criminal.
Yeah, Randy
chief,
Quaid.
Whose name I don't know.
Randy Quaid. What is he up to recently? I don't think I've seen him in anything recently. I think the last thing I remember seeing him in was like Independence Day.
No, okay, fair play.
Let me go back a little bit. No, it looks like he's done a few TV shows. He's been doing some TV work.
Okay, cool. And what about the chief? Is he?
I think that gentleman may have passed away. Let me double check.
No, that's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he wasn't like. I don't think he was.
No, but that's never nice to hear,
No, of course not. No. So, but I don't think it'd be. Let me just quickly double check. I've got to do the full cast thing again. I love that we're doing a "Where Are They Now" bit. We've not done that before. I love it.
Yeah, I think it would get tedious if we do it every time. But I think.
Here we go. Jason Robards. Yeah, his last film was 2000, so he's either retired or sadly passed away. No, he died in 2000 at 78. So he made films right up till he died. Bless him.
Yeah, fair play to him for that. And that's rest in peace.
Yeah. He's wonderful in this, and he seems like he had a huge career. I was looking back. My God, the man was making movies. The man was making movies in the 50s, Chris.
Wow, 1950 to 2000. Wow,
a 50-year run of just being excellent in films, no doubt. What amazing!
Say his name again, Dan.
What's that, sir? Jason Robards.
Say his name again. There you go, Jason Robards. We salute you, sir.
Absolutely, we do. What a hero! Yeah, 1949 his first movie, and then he did everything after that was 50s onwards. And God, so Magnolia, All the President's Men. God, my God, this man did everything. What a hero! There you go. So
great character actor by the sounds of it.
Yeah, absolutely. yeah. So I'm
Cool.
I had a blast rewatching this, and I'm glad I chose it. So I suppose the question now, Chris, is what next? Have you decided?
Well, I have decided over the course of this, Dan. I've decided actually I want to go in a different direction. You know, we've had kids films, we've had with animation in, this is an adults film. Let's delve into the young YA young adult teenage years, Dan. Next week we're going to be looking at 10 Things I Hate About You.
Okay, right, interesting.
Have you ever seen it?
No.
Have you never?
No.
I remember watching it and enjoying it as a kid.
Yeah, I never saw it. I think I've seen scenes from it. I remember it being on TV, and there was a kind of long curly head guy acting goofy or something, and I was like,
Heath Ledger.
Was that Heath Ledger? Dear Lord.
Yeah, it's quite as far as Heath Ledger's. This is like a go-to for Heath Ledger roles that people talk about.
Is that right? I don't know. It just kind of like because I wasn't as into that sort of like after American Pie. There were a huge wave of movies, and some of them were and weren't in that vein, but to my young brain, they were all the same.
Right. Yeah.
And I've learnt since that I was wrong about a lot of those movies. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of movies
that's...
about young teen people or younger, like, in that direction, often played by 20-somethings or 30-somethings. But like there were a lot of movies, aimed at that. But because American Pie, and I didn't love American Pie. I thought American Pie was fine. I didn't love those movies at all. I know you had quite a fondness for them, so I'm sure they'll come up again at some point on this.
Yeah, I probably would have. I might have chosen American Pie if it weren't for the fact that I was ill recently and watched all 4 and then road trip in the space of 2 days.
Yeah,
but it was. I'm American Pied out.
That's fair.
I nearly, because I wanted to go rom-com, and I nearly chose another rom-com, which I will choose at some point. But it felt too. It's an adult rom-com. We've just done an adult comedy, and it just felt a bit too similar. And it's got a cast member that a film we've already reviewed has in it. Just in case anyone can work out what I'm referring to there cryptically. But that film might come up. But I thought, well, we've not done that sort of YA targeted film. Let's do it here. 10 Things I Hate About You.
So because well, have I drawn an incorrect line there? Because I've assumed in the years since so basically American Pie happened. There was a big wave of like road trip, like that whole like those sort of like those quite frat boy-esque teen movies. But what happened was I then started lumping in other teen movies into that same category without watching them. And I think I did that with 10 Things I Hate About You, which is why I never ended up seeing it. But I think that's wrong. I've decided since that that is not a fair comparison.
No, I mean, 10 Things I Hate About You is a adaptation of The Taming of the Shrew, essentially. So yeah, is that right? I don't, and maybe watching it, you'll be like, no, this is pretty similar to that sort of film. My memory is that it isn't.
I've just pulled up the cast. Dear Lord, that's a good cast.
Yeah. I was just saying, they, according to my quick Googling here, they came out in the same year.
Is that right? But I wouldn't have caught it, like, because I wouldn't have seen it in the cinema.
No.
I assume that from my perspective, American Pie hits in the cinema, they're huge, it's huge. But by the time I come across this, it's on TV a few years later, and it feels like a copycat.
No. I can see why you've done that, but that's further evidence for it not being that.
Absolutely,
is that they actually came out in the same.
But
year.
I mean, I scanned the cast list and I see Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Julia Stiles, Heath Ledger, Alison Janney's in this movie. I love Alison Janney. Is that pre or post West Wing for Alison Janney?
It's probably around the same time.
You're absolutely right. Wing. Yeah, 1999. So West Wing was what, 2000?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, you know what? Maybe I'm not. Oh no. Oh wow. You around the same time is not wrong, mate. 1999, both of them. So she must have. She must have shot that movie before she started work on The West Wing. That's crazy.
I don't know, but I'm excited to rewatch. I remember like watching it with my first serious girlfriend. Like, so I don't know if it will bring back any memories. I remember really not. Wait, I said memories weird there. like, I don't know whether that nostalgia will play a part in it. I don't think I owned it. Maybe I borrowed it of someone or recorded it. I definitely saw it more than once, and I remember enjoying it. So yeah, I'm intrigued as to what we're going to feel about this one.
Yeah, I'm excited to give it.
I like that we're hearing you discover, like, oh no, this film, like, it didn't come out in the same era. It had an amazing cast. Like, maybe there's something here.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. Like I've had a glance and I'm like, oh wait, you know what? Like maybe. But to be fair, I have in the years since I dismissed this movie, enough people whose opinions I respect have told me they enjoyed it to make me go, I probably got that wrong. Which is why that when you said it, I explained that I incorrectly lumped it in with a bunch of movies that came out around that time and have since figured out I was probably wrong.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, so it's one of those things. But yeah, okay. Well, there you go. Let's we'll watch that next time. So come back possibly in a week. Depends what's happening with Steven Universe. But for those of you who don't know, we do another podcast called Steven University, and we're going to try and make sure that like we intersperse these. So there's no guaranteed release schedule with this. Although the first few will have probably come out quite consistently week to week. There's no guarantee going forward that'll be the case. You might find some gaps when Steven Universe stuff happens. We'll certainly be taking a break when Steven Universe Future actually airs. That'll probably be a multi-week gap. But for the time being, it's perfect for us. It's quite enjoyable.
Does it feel weird how we did this? You know, we never consciously went right. Basically, unless there's real, when the conceit of this was first on, it was like, unless there's some Steven Universe stuff we fancy doing or talking about. It was never as clear cut as chances are, unless there's actual news, we're doing this, which is sort of what it's become. But oddly, now that Steven Universe is Steven Universe Future, doing an episode like top 10 favourite towny characters would feel oddly out of date. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we will do some of that if we have a really good idea, or there's no Steven Universe news for 4 months. We're not going to just do nothing. We will do a rewatch or something.
Well,
but
we need to do a hindsight episode on the movie. So
yeah,
well, I'm waiting for the documentary for that.
Yeah. So stuff will come, but it's weird how, I don't know, some of it feels, now that there's a whole new show, it feels odd. And I guess, you know, we're really enjoying these. Maybe that's part of it, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a blast.
Turns out it's difficult to maintain a podcast about a show when there's no news or sign of it coming back.
Yeah, that's precisely that. So yeah, but in terms of this, if you're enjoying this, obviously give us a like, give us a review. On iTunes or on Spotify. I updated the logo yesterday. I like it better now. I've made it a little bit more stylized. I'll show you that later, Chris. You might not have seen it yet, but it was a bit clean cut. It was much easier. It was like really clear and easy to read, but it was kind of boring. Had a white background, like I don't know. So I've jazzed it up a bit. Cool. And I'm excited to. I'm excited to keep doing these. I'm having a lot of fun. And the other day I sat down and had a big look through lists of films that came out in certain years. And my list of potential films for us to do now is fucking huge.
Whereas I on the podcast think, what should we do?
Mate, it's absurd.
But it's quite nice I think the two approaches are quite cool, because I think it is like, so I'll spoil it now and say that we're going to do it at some point. The other choice I was wrestling with was There's Something About Mary.
Right.
Because that's an adult comedy, this was an adult comedy, and the week before was Lee Evans, it was like, we'll save that. So, you know, that's...
he's the guitar player. Is he the guitar playing guy in that one?
No, he's the pizza delivery guy who... Okay. It turns out isn't or is he he plays a guy in crutches? I can't really remember. I think he's playing multiple. He's a guy who's disguising himself as multiple different people.
Oh, that's weird.
I do remember really enjoying that movie, but 10 Things I Hate About You felt different to the other ones we've done. So it's 10 Things I Hate next week, and we're somewhere down the road. We'll get to There's Something About Mary.
Great. There you go.
And of course, the one we're all waiting for me to say, Good Burger.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. But you'll have to at least wait 2 weeks for that because I've got the pick after, and I'm wrestling between a few different options. I'm excited though to find out what we go for.
Oh, I'm gonna keep Good Burger in my back locker. I think my back locker. Is that the phrase?
Back pocket.
Back pocket, Dan. That's the one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a list of like over 100 films now that I can pick from. So.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping
So
I'm not doing it won't be my next one, but at some point as well we'll have to come back for Short Circuit 2. I'm quite excited to show you Short Circuit 2 because Short Circuit 2, yeah, that's gonna break your brain a bit, I think.
I'm excited. I'm excited because we've all been, they've been quite light-hearted. They've been fun. I'm excited for when one of us is like, right, Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah,
there's
a few like that on my list where I'm just like, we won't get to that anytime soon.
Shawshank is on my list because I watched it as a kid and loved it, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
mate. Absolutely. At some point, Titanic. So there you go.
At some point, the Terminator films. I've had a look at that.
Titanic does not hold up.
At some point, I'm going to force you to watch the live-action Flintstones movie. I'm convinced.
I remember loving that as a kid.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Well, I don't know if I loved it. I remember enjoying it. I had it on video.
Yeah, I did too. And they're talking about, YA content, The Faculty. That's one that I might consider at some point. That's a great movie.
I've never seen, and this is just, we've got to stop descending into a list of movies, but I've never seen, but I know how controversial 16 Candles now is. So I'd be intrigued to check that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw it when I was younger.
I think reason to watch it.
I think I've only ever seen that one once,
Apparently, now it's horrific. Well, it should have been horrific now, from what I hear.
Right. Well, there you go. That might be worth watching in itself then, and we can explore what the issues were. Yeah, there's a bunch, man. There's a bunch. Casper, Small Soldiers.
Yeah.
The original Power Rangers movie, the 90s one.
Yeah. Toy Story.
Truman Show. I want to rewatch
Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber, RoboCop, Karate Kid.
I rewatched. I'd like to see Karate Kid. I rewatched Truman Show fairly recently.
Lost in Space, the Matt LeBlanc one.
Yeah, hell yeah.
The Cable Guy. Do you remember the Cable Guy, the Jim Carrey movie? That was an immense movie.
Never seen it. It's Liar, Liar, and The Mask. Basically, Jim Carrey's entire discography, partly to force Dan to watch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and make him get angry.
I don't like that movie. Pretentious. It's a pretentious movie. Maybe I'll feel differently. I've not watched it in quite a while, so maybe I'll feel differently. But when I saw that, I found it totally pretentious.
How late are we going? Because I've got a choice from 2011. I'd quite like to do it at some point, but that feels.
I think that's fine. I mean, we never specifically said we were gonna it was every single one would be an older movie.
I think it's like I think it can be the 2011 one. Like I've got memories attached to it. So. In fact, the 2011 one, there's a mental story that I think I may have told on the podcast before. Actually, I don't know if I have. Connected to that movie. So yeah,
right.
I think if there's a nostalgic reason to choose a more modern film, then I think it's allowed.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think so.
But it would be weird.
Yeah, at a certain point, we're going to run out of actual nostalgic movies, but it does seem like I've got a list here that's going to get us a few hundred in because it's ridiculous. Battery's Not Included, Homeward Bound. Baby's Day Out, Goonies, Back to the Future at some point, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, Cool Runnings, Mrs. Doubtfire, Dear Lord, My Girl,
Cool
Babe, E.T.
So, I mean, now you're literally just listing movies.
I mean, that's what I was saying. My point is I've got a really long list of films that we could consider. So the
danger is that people are like, why aren't you doing those? Why are you doing Chris's pick of 10 things I hate about you?
It's Chris's turn, everyone.
I think that's a nostalgic movie for people.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Absolutely sure it is. Yeah, 100%. I imagine Nadia will want to watch this one with me.
Yeah, there you go.
So
cool. There you go, peeps.
And I cannot say the same thing for any other movie we've watched so far.
Well, I forced Jess to watch Space Jam.
Right.
Not the others.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Although I do think she would have enjoyed Quick Change.
Who, Jess or Nadia?
Jess. Nadia's already seen Quick Change.
Yeah.
Oh, I forced Nadia to watch Quick Change within the first 2 years of our relationship. I was like, no, you're watching Quick Change.
I think she probably would have done, yeah.
No. It's a good film.
Yeah.
Anyway,
cool.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Right.
We'll see you again next week for, whenever it gets put up, for 10 Things I Hate About You. As always, head to the Patreon to get episodes ahead of time. That one might even already be up. Where we're at the moment, I've got 3 episodes on the Patreon, but only 1 episode on the YouTube channel. So right now the Patreon's 2 episodes ahead. So if you're thinking, God, I really want to hear them talk about 10 things I hate about you, give us as little as $1, and you have access to it. We've not paywalled it behind a certain tier. You just give whatever you feel like, and you have access to the episodes early on there. So there you go.
There you go. I've been Chris Billman.
I've been Dan Dillon.
And this review has been Rewind.